I'm probably preaching to the choir when I say that the New Testament is literature, meaning looking at it as some historical evidence of what really literally happened through and through is just vain. Honestly, it's futile because there's so much theology. There's so much imitation of Hebrew scriptures. There is what I would say imitation of the Greek literature and potentially the Latin literature, Virgil's Aeneid. Today, I bombard my friend David McDonald's YouTube channel with some super chats, as I do from time to time. And I asked Dr. Robyn Faith Walsh very important questions pertaining to this literature. I haven't really heard her spell it out this way, so I ask it. The demoniac in Mark looks awfully like what Dennis MacDonald says is in the Odyssey, with Circe the witch and Polyphemus, which is the book right before Circe the witch. Of course, nothing is a Xerox copy. If you find Xerox copies, the authors are just not very clever. They do the same thing by rewriting Jesus into the better Elijah, the better Moses. This happens all throughout the New Testament. However, people are quick to jump on board and go, you know what? Actually, yeah, I'm willing to do that with the Jewish material, but God forbid we touch that other stuff. Dr. Walsh answers the questions that I bring to the table. And one is, do you think that this is pointing back to Homer? Or do you also think that maybe Heracles that is found in Virgil's Aeneid with this cave, a monstrous beast in this cave, is there anything happening there as well? Is it one or the other? Could it be both? What is the inspiration here? Do you think this is happening? And then I had to jab in that whole we passages thing. Is the we passages in Luke, Acts, really literal or literary? And she gives her answer. On that one, it's not as long, but I really hope you go subscribe to Deep Drinks. My buddy David's doing some great work there. And of course, Dr. Robyn Faith Walsh has a course on Paul. We're about to launch the course on the Gospels that we did with her. So please let us know in the comment section your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Drop a comment, like the video, share this out, and check out our description. We've got courses. We've got all sorts of great things that we're doing here at MythVision.
MythVision podcast, $5. Thank you. Dr. Walsh. Sorry, not Dr. Walsh. Robyn Walsh. Sorry. The demoniac.
I don't know why Derek's saying Dr. Walsh. You can call me Robyn.
Cool. Walshy. Well, I'll give you an Australian. I should give you an Australian like nickname. Walshy or something. I don't know.
That's what my family calls me.
Polyphemus and Circe look very similar. Do you think this coupled with Virgil's Hercules cave account is being imitated?
Yeah, sure. I think that these are the kind of things we definitely need to look at. Dennis MacDonald would probably say go back to Homer. And I like Dennis's method, but I think that Derek's asking this in part because he knows I have an article coming out saying Mark read Virgil, which I appreciate the opportunity for the plug. But I think that these kinds of motifs are informing these authors for a variety of possible reasons. Not only, let's say, we've speculated maybe filling in a gap that they're missing otherwise, trying to allude to the importance of their narrative relative to other narratives that are out there, but also as possibly an apologetic, like my foundational account, is as important as something like what Virgil or Homer is producing. It's the same kind of cultural impact and import. So I think that it's a strategy that goes across the board.
Awesome. Another $5 super chat from MythVision. What are a few of your favorite imitations in the Gospels to Virgil, Homer, or any Greek sources? Can you explain why it's imitation? You de bomb.
Yes, sure. Thanks for the softball. So the thing that I argue in the article that's going to come out is that, especially in Mark, there's a tendency, sometimes it's referred to as the Messianic secret, or allied to that concept. But, Jesus keeps telling people, don't tell anybody who I am, on one hand, but also repeatedly in the text, no one seems to know who Jesus is. So Jesus will come in, he'll perform some kind of miracle, and everybody is, the word is thauma in Greek. Everybody is dumbfounded. They're like going out of their minds and bewildered, and they don't understand what they've just seen, and they run away like dazed and confused. Who was that guy, right? So that happens over and over again. That term thauma happens in Virgil, happens in other writers too, but I latched onto Virgil. And again, Homer too is operational here, but I think Virgil is the closer corollary temporally, but also in terms of the content. He has figures like Camilla come in to scenes where, you know, she's such a subversive character because she's like a military figure, but she's a woman. I think the phrase is that, you know, she's not concerned with the baskets of Minerva, you know, like she's very much like this martial character. And when she will like ride into town, she's a Thalma. People are dumbfounded. They're bewildered. They're almost going out of their minds. They don't know how to make sense of this person because she is such a subversive character. And so I argue that in terms of like literary construction, it seems to me that the author of the Gospel of Mark, you know, we ascribe to this idea of Thalma some kind of theological category, like Messianic secret, right? There must be a theological reason nobody knows who he is. Oh, he's trying to delay his own, you know, execution by telling people not to reveal who he is, or by instilling this kind of confusion, because if he instills this confusion, then he can delay the inevitable, you know, like crucifixion. Sure, that could be part of what's going on, except it's very much a literary motif that you find in Virgil, right? So like there are characters that come in, nobody understands who they are because they're so outside of the ordinary, and people are dumbfounded and they walk away like bewildered, who was that person? So it's just another literary motif. And then this opens up a whole other set of issues. You know, is the author of the Gospel of Mark reading Latin? Probably, you know, based on the way people were educated, the way libraries were constructed. It opens up a whole other, you know, again, range of possibilities for thinking about these authors.
Is it like if the Gospels were written in like ancient Chinese? That if like you started quoting like the Tao Te Ching, or I think it's the Tao Te, you'd be like, something suspicious here. Like, is it kind of like that? Is like,
you know, something I did in the book, you asked me before we started, like, what's something no one's asked you about? I'll tell you, that book is full. I did it on purpose, is littered with my own cultural references so that someone in the future would know when I wrote it. Like, and they would know what I listened to and what I watch and what. And I mean, everybody does that to some extent. You can't avoid it. To your point, you know, these things, these culturally dominant narratives make their way in as we integrate ourselves into them as new writers, as thinkers who emerge, you know, within a particular time and space. But I did it on purpose so that people could really see what I was trying. It's kind of like a meta thing that I did in the book.
Yeah.
And some of it's obvious. Like I talk about Francois Gillot at the end of the book. Some of it is like a footnote to the Beatles, you know. Yeah. I think I have a day in the life. I ended up keeping that. That's John Lennon. You know, like I'm obsessed with John Lennon. I was born in 1980. You know, like so it'd be like, you know, Nirvana is going to show up somewhere in something I write. I'm writing an article. No, but I
can almost hear your husband in the background going, nerd. I love that though. Yeah.
No, but like this is how I grew up, you know, and it puts me in time and space. I'm writing an article right now that quotes Little Kim, like in the title. Like I'm trying to like include these things. They date me and they're probably a little corny, but it actually to me is displaying the thing that I'm doing to the ancient text, right? And you can from there extrapolate all kinds of things about influences, and you know some of it's encoded in the scholars I cite. You can probably figure out where I went to school. You know, and you can decide if it matters that I'm a mother or whatever else, right? Based on but I try to do that as like another level, intentional level of discourse in the book. So I think these things are out there.
That's awesome. You know, I didn't grow up with the Beatles. Well, I probably did, but I didn't like the Beatles or anything until I read Haruki Murakami's novel Norwegian Wood. It's a bit perverted. It's a bit, it's teen angst, depression, you know, like all that kind of stuff that you go through as a young adult. And that book is written about is Norwegian Wood, but it references the song. And when after it, I was like, I wonder what the song is about. And I listened to the song, and that song hit me it's somehow like he's a brilliant writer. It just wrapped it all up for me, and it was just like I could see the story, even though it's not really about what the story. It's just I don't know how to describe it, but I became a huge fan, and since then I put on Here Comes the Sun and Norwegian Wood, and I put on when I'm bathing our boy Atlas. So yeah. So MythVision again. The we passages literary or literal? Why?
Literary.
Okay.
There's a tradition of we passages. So sometimes I think it happens in Acts, and I think Luke occasionally slips into a second person plural, like a plural voice. So like we went to do this and we went to do that. But there's some scholarship out there, several articles about how this is a common thing that happens in other kinds of ancient literature, and it's just kind of like a inclusive phrase. So I'll defer to I'll find if I can follow up with bibliography. I can't remember the name of the person who wrote the article. I don't know why I have such a blank on this. And this article comes up all the time, and I have to ask my friends, like, who was that again? So it's really shameful. But there's some literature out there on the wheat passages. And so I would just recommend people take a look on academia.edu is a great place to find this stuff for free.
Academia.edu. Okay. No worries.